of a civil society. Just it doesn't percolate from the top down. It sprouts, it blossoms. It will have to be a solution that involves not just Israelis and Palestinians, but just about everybody else in the Middle East. It's going to have to involve the Syrians, it's going to involve the Lebanese, the Jordanians. It's going to involve a resettlement plan of many tens of billions of dollars for the Palestinians, compensation for Palestinian refugees, compensation for Jewish refugees from Arab lands that's going to be on the table as well. We are talking about a diplomatic undertaking which is probably unrivaled in modern political history, unrivaled. Is it possible? Anything's possible. But I would strongly, strongly suggest, first of all, don't sap your hope, and secondly, understand that this is a long process. There is no peace now, but there may be peace someday.
If I can interrupt briefly, we have time for 3 more questions. Please keep your questions concise, and we'll give Professor Oren the opportunity to respond to those before we call it a night. We're running a bit long on time, but it's important that at least 3 more of you have the chance to ask.
Sir.
Good evening, Professor. I am Yasu Yoshi of Japan, here at the Georgetown Public Policy Institute. And my burning interest has been about marketing, and in wartime we may call it propaganda, various effects of these things. And you, as I recall, being a spokesman for the IDF, I've been very interested in how, and I appreciate that you mentioned that you do try to investigate what has happened on the ground. But looking at history, not just Israel, but with the U.S. military as well as with the Second World War involving Japan, that the military may not be the most honest source of information, and you being the spokesman for the recent conflict, that I'm very curious as to on what kind of basis, and I do not want to cast any doubt on your integrity as a historian throughout your career.
But you will anyway.
But nevertheless, that how can we believe the position that Israel takes? Equally could be said with Hamas, but nevertheless. I'm curious about what your opinion and how Israel and the military handles such kind of information.
Boy, do I appreciate that question. That was my dream question, I want to tell you. I was thinking about what was the question I'd most like to get from this audience, and there I just got it. Thank you. Well, there's 2 ways to approach this. There's a personal approach and there's an institutional approach. Personally, people often ask me how I can, on one hand, get up in front of a classroom and talk as a historian who strives for balance and accuracy, and then get on a uniform and represent a government or an army. And the formula is very simple. It is actually the sort of the DNA of the citizens' army. When you put on the uniform, you no longer have a political opinion. You have the opinion of the army. When you take it off, you get all your political opinions back. I've been serving in the same unit now with some very, very fine people. I'm deeply privileged to be serving in my unit that I serve in for now 10 years. I have no idea what the politics are of my comrades in the same unit. We never talk about politics. Just never part of our discussions. And it's similar as Dennis Ross being called to government, that old Cincinnatus effect. Dennis has certain opinions. When he goes into the Obama administration, he's going to represent the Obama administration. When he comes back to Georgetown, he will represent Dennis Ross again. Very simple. It's the nature of government service. We could not have a citizens' army and not have that formula. The minute we bring politics into our army, we're finished. Now, the question about the Israeli army and its relationship to the truth. And here I can only give you my personal perspective. I've been in this army now for 30 years and involved in various aspects of its public diplomacy for over 10. I have never known the Israeli army publicly to lie, purposely to lie. There have been misstatements made. I'll give you one great example from 2006. The Israeli army made a statement that they weren't using cluster bombs. I saw cluster bombs being used. I saw them on the pallets. How'd that happen? Well, what happened? Brigade commanders never told division commanders that they were losing cluster bombs. So what looks like an untruth. It looks like a lie to the public. It's not a lie. In fact, it was a breakdown in communication. It was like that report that we got from the General Staff saying that 40 Israeli soldiers had been killed. Don't assume that we were all in exquisite communication with one another. But the fact of the matter is that when you saw Major Avital Leibovich, she was the woman who was most often interviewed by CNN and Fox, and she got up there and they were accused saying, what do you say about the UN school that's been hit there or the 50 kids killed there? And she says, we are investigating. It's because we're investigating. Because it'd be the easiest thing in the world to say we didn't do it. And we're up against an enemy that doesn't really have a military strategy. Hezbollah doesn't have a military strategy. Hamas doesn't have a military strategy. They have a media strategy. They don't think that Katyusha rockets, the Qassam rockets, going to destroy the state of Israel. But they use them as media tools. And they lie. They lie regularly. I watched in Lebanon 2006 while they tripled in the course of 3 minutes the amount of people killed in the Kfar Kana incident. And the press dutifully reported. I watched as they hauled out 2 ambulances in Sidon that had burnt holes right in the red crosses of their roofs and told the New York Times that those had been direct hits by Israeli rockets, and they put the picture on the front page of the New York Times, and those 2 holes were created by acetylene torches. I watched as the same man in the green cap, we called him, appeared in a corpse on various hill rubbles across southern Lebanon. The man in the green cap, we liked him. We watched it in Jenin. We watched it in this war again and again. I can't tell you, we were constantly having to deal with these reports that are picked up by the foreign press immediately and published as facts. We had to. We are investigating. And you should only sit in our meetings, which would start at around 11 o'clock and conclude at around 4 o'clock in the morning every single night. Went to work around 5, 6. Some of you may have seen me on Hannity and Coombs. That was shot at 4 in the morning. On a bullet-swept hillside. Every night we are going through all of these reports and trying to give the most truthful analysis we can. It's what we're about. Does that mean we always get it right? No. Does that mean that some things that we announce we believe are right but later prove not to be right? Does happen. I'll give you one last example because I know you're getting tired of this, right? One of my recommendations in reserves over the last 2 years in my reports was that Israel should never apologize. We should say we're investigating, but we should never apologize, because it has happened so many times. It happened in the Mohammed al-Dura affair. We apologized for shooting at Mohammed al-Dura. There's a good chance that the kid never even existed. But we had an incident several years ago where 8 members of a Palestinian family in Gaza were killed on the beach. You remember this? And Hamas immediately came out and said that they were killed by an Israeli tank shell. Israel came out and apologized. Now, Israel keeps very strict records of where it fires shells. They're computerized. And it turned out we hadn't fired a shell anywhere around there in that time. And then we received a young woman, a girl, 9-year-old girl, who had been wounded. She was one of the survivors of this family. And she was given to the Israelis because they couldn't do the operation in Gaza. And it turned out that somebody, I can't imagine who, had taken a metal detector and had detected all the shrapnel in this girl's body and ripped them out. Why? So that Israel couldn't tell where the shrapnel came from. Well, they missed a splinter. And it turned out the splinter wasn't from an Israeli shell. It was from a Hamas mine on the beach. And we had apologized for this as well. This is what we're up against. This is the battle. And today, the media battle is every bit as important as the actual combat battle. That's where it's being fought. Sorry for raining on about that. That was my question. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
My name is Mark Levine. My question is, Edward Luttwak, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, has written an essay entitled Give War a Chance.
Okay.
And
we all know it.
My question to you is that given the fact that Hamas was elected in a democratic election by the majority of the population, who seemingly subscribed to their doctrine, to obliterate the state of Israel. Do you believe that do you subscribe at all to Luttwak's premise that this type of endless cycle of war and ceasefire and war and ceasefires, because the situation is not allowed to progress until the parties are exhausted, one side wins over the other, that there is some measure of correctness to his evaluation, and would you attribute that to this current situation?
It's a bit of apples and oranges. The fact that Hamas was elected by the majority of the population of Gaza doesn't bestow legitimacy on Hamas in my eyes and doesn't make it less